Hello, everyone. We are here with another episode. Today is a solo episode, just with my co-host Natasha and I, and we are going to talk about a very interesting topic where we are going to mix one more time the science and spirituality realms into the biology of meaning and understanding why purpose lowers inflammation. So those are two topics that right now I think they are extremely important because we really are witnessing how people are losing purpose with this rise of AI systems and not using too much their brain or understanding what they are doing in their own lives. No, that's what I think. What do you think, Natasha?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty that's coming up at the moment, especially from what I tend to see. And even then, I've recently been guided to kind of like shift in the work that I do. Yes, absolutely supporting people in their health, but focusing more on business, going back into corporate and really starting to support this more of a mindful leadership. Kind of like idea, and yeah, I'm doing it through connecting into the Akashic records, and it's so interesting because it's seen as very much kind of like out there to bring in spirituality into business, but a lot of the times people are suffering from burnout and fatigue and inflammation and anxiety and emotional kind of like extreme, like we don't know how to hold on to our emotions because we've repressed them for such a long time. I'm seeing a lot of insomnia that's coming up as well, difficulty in making decisions, kind of like decision fatigue that's coming in. And I think a lot of that is a lot of it is, I think we're starting to lose what was our direction. Some of us are realizing that the jobs that we're in never was our direction to be there in the first place. Um, Sometimes we tend to live out our parents' dreams or what people want for us instead of like living our own passion, our own purpose. We end up living the passion and purpose of other people. And that actually starts to, if I look at it from the space of an Akashic blueprint, so your code that you created before you were born and what you've come to experience, your mission, your soul's purpose as to why you're here, and you end up living somebody else's blueprint, it actually starts to create some sort of a malfunction in our bodies to actually point us into the right direction to move us into kind of like, this is why you're here. And I can only talk to that for myself, and I also believe we're always on purpose in one way or another. We're always drawing towards us um, the lessons that we need, and perhaps a lot of the times the lesson is live your passion, your purpose, and not somebody else's, which is quite interesting. And the other thing that I tend to find as well is when people live somebody else's dream, somebody else's purpose, they forget what makes them happy, right? Because when we're on purpose, when we're living our passion, we're excited, we're in flow, everything's falling into place, everything is kind of like moving along. It's like I remember I was talking to our accountant, and she had been referred to on by another friend of mine that does the spiritual work, and it was a Monday, and I was like, hey, what an amazing, another week has started, let's like, and she was like, oh my god, you're like the only two people that I know that are happy on a Monday. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy every day. It doesn't matter whether it's Monday or Sunday, it's like I get to do this awesome stuff that I love, and supporting people. And I think and I've started seeing in my clients, once we deviate from our passion, our purpose, it really starts to affect our physical health, because it's our health telling us, hey, it's time to move. It's time to shift into a different direction, right? And it comes across, we get those little nudges, as we've spoken about before, that little cold that comes in, which is a little bit of kind of like, hey, slow down. That's not the direction you want to go in. Or whatever it may be, whatever we're suppressing in order to fit into somebody else's passion, somebody else's purpose, has complete effect on our bodies, right? Burnout is adrenal fatigue. A lot of the times you find it, right? If we suppress our creativity, like sometimes we end up having thyroid issues because it's our center of expression, the center of being seen, being heard, right? This empowerment sometimes shows up in kind of like a reproductive or hormone imbalance, whatever it is, shows up in our body, whatever we're suppressing. So it's a very, very interesting that this topic that you've brought up as well, right?
Yeah, and now that you are mentioning, there are a lot of keywords that I listen to, which are these repression of things
Mm,
that we do in our lives. That's the same thing that happens in our immunity when we repress the immune system because we are too loaded on cortisol, we are too loaded on stressful. We are also releasing some chemical
mm,
substances that are called cytokines, and these cytokines can be pro-inflammatory, which are raised with these cortisol levels, and they start flowing into our system. And through the, let's say, through time, and you don't need too
mm-hmm,
much time to really rise up the level of your stress, you start developing several of the diseases that we are seeing now peaking, which such
mm-hmm,
as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. All of those are the category of those are these the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal gland
mm-hmm.
with this axis that releases all of these hormones start
Yeah.
going into overdrive, let's say, and you really don't have you are not giving your body time to um, let's say buffer the system. You are
Yeah.
just racing the machine such as if you were driving and you were just keep constantly and constantly pushing the accelerator of your car and running out of gas, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and uh,
Yeah.
hitting the motor, hitting the machine. So what is going to happen? Well, there's going to be a place and a time where your car is going to completely burn out
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it won't work. So that's what happens in our diseases. We push so much the level of stress that we arrive to a point where all of the hormonal and chemical and let's say magical language
Mm,
of our bodies starts disrupting, and it's not it's not able to control the amount of activation and stress
yeah.
that we are having constantly. So that's why, as you mentioned, doing what you love, uh, being able to express your ideas, being able to
Mm-hmm.
say what you think, and without censorship, let's say, uh, it's
Yeah.
it's our human nature, and it allows us to feel good, to be in harmony, to look for that balance, and you start activating this parasympathetic state, which is the relaxed system. No.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's like, and we start to see it in our immune system, right?
Mhm.
That reduced resiliency that we have, and basically our immune system really reflects our alignment with who we are. And when we're disconnected from our purpose, our body starts to receive this constant. It receives it as a low grade threat, actually. So it starts like it's either starts to attack itself, or we start to get infections so that we slow down. It's almost kind of like these fragments, these blockages, from an Akashic perspective, denying our purpose really starts to create fractured energy fields, blocked chakras, especially the throat, which is our letter, that self-expression, as I experienced, talked about our solar plexus, which is like our power center, and our heart, like what we desire, like what we, it really is about a broken heart that we start to look through. And it would start to leak our life force as well, so it's like it's fatigued because it's not who we are, so we actually have to work harder, whereas it depletes us. When we are in passion, when we are on purpose, we're fueled, we're energetic, we're like let's go. It's like we have this endless reservoir of energy. And some of the big questions that I get asked is, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And it's so interesting that I've been asked to look at the space of looking back into corporate, into helping leaders to understand that, because I think we also come very much from a culture of busyness is key. It makes you important. The more busy you are, the more important you must be, right? Kind of a thing. We don't value rest. We don't value slowing down. We don't value the mindful aspect of it, because for such a long time we've been taught to live in overdrive, right? Because the more we achieve, the more we do, perhaps maybe the better people we are. I don't know. It's we end up walking around with that chip on our shoulder, and a lot of the times is we're doing things externally where it's
Yeah.
a show for everybody else, but is it exactly what we want internally, in our hearts, right? And I absolutely believe that inflammation is the sole signal of the body just starting to rebel. It's a way of saying something's not right. I mean, if we look at it from an elemental perspective, it's fire, right?
Mhm.
Something's out of alignment. It's kind of like the body protesting, saying, "Okay, enough's enough. Slow down. Stop. What are we doing here? We're not living our purpose. We're not honoring our passion. We're playing too small. We're staying safe. Our body translates it as inner dissonance, right? And I suppose a biochemical rebellion starts to happen in our body, and it's kind of like stop, kind of a thing. So I tend to see it quite a bit, and I think it's important to bring in practices that will help people in their works. And it's so important to be aligned with the companies that you're working for, to be aligned in the work that you're doing.
It's funny that you mention all of those things because this year it's supposed to be the year of fire. So
Yeah.
that's why I think also many people have these struggles with this firestorm, let's say,
Mm,
chemicals, and
yeah.
not having this control over themselves and going in these overdrive situations where they just focus on the money, on survival.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's even on survival, and sometimes it's just shutting down what they really believe, what they think, and they are constantly being repressed and being shut down by their own bosses because they are not leaders. You cannot call a person that shuts down your creativity a leader. That is
Mm-hmm.
just a person that has some power and some hierarchy, and he wants
Yeah.
to shut down everyone with fear and with threatens people. And there is just a situation that I just live, and I think it's worth sharing that because I
Yeah.
was in an institution, in an education of institution that was supposed to be one of the greats in here in Mexico, and they had such a lying ethical code because they made you make a lot of trainings and things with ethics and your integrity and how you are being looked as a leader with your students. And on the other side, they ask you, to past students, even if they copy uh, work from AI, or even if they copy things from their own peers, and they just uh, plagiarized uh, things. So I was not in alignment with that, and I was not going to go
Mm,
on doing that kind of job because I it was not in alignment with me, and it started to feel bad in my body, and I started to
yeah,
feel many of those symptoms that we are talking about because
yeah.
I lost the will to teach,
Mhm.
which is something that I love. I love to teach people. I love to teach science. I love to teach any kind of topic that I'm getting into. And that's why also we do this kind of podcast because we
Yeah,
love to help people and to teach them what we also are struggling with. And
yeah,
that was my wake up call. You are losing your passion. You are losing
yeah.
your skill. You are losing your drive to teach and to make students, young people, think in a different way and question what they are being faced with just because an institution wants to make money. So that's what is
Mm,
now education. Education now it's recruiting clients. They are not students anymore, sadly. They are just clients. And that's what is happening in many areas of people. They are just being repressed on what they say because I spoke, I said what I think,
mhm.
and now I'm not anymore a teacher. So that's what happens now.
Yeah, and I think sometimes these things come to point you in the direction of creating things your way, right? It's usually these are opportunities when I believe that when these doors close, it's because they've served their purpose, and perhaps the purpose is to really look at it and go, okay, no, well, this is not the direction. You need to teach your way. You need to teach your own content. You need to educate in a different way that's not there anymore. But I do believe that all systems are crumbling, and I've been saying this for the last few years. It's not only education; it's the finance, it's the health systems,
Mm.
it's all of our structures are really starting to fail, and it's because it's almost kind of like if you look at it as, I don't know, if you were to look at it as the skeletal system, there's too
Mm.
much that's built on there, and it just can't handle what's going on. So something's got to give, right? We're putting a lot of pressure on the foundational structures of life, of society, and people are getting tired. And it's like, and I think that there's a lot of this that is starting to show up in our bodies now because we just can't continue in the way that we are. Um, and it's showing up in inflammation in so many different places. I mean, usually for me, when things are connected into, say, for example, knees, ankles, feet, it's all about destiny. It's all about we don't want to keep moving in the direction that we're moving in, right? I mean, I ended up breaking my leg in 5 places before I switched careers, right? And I loved what I did. I loved marketing, and I loved working for the technical companies that I did. But I got to a stage where my soul was calling for a higher, purpose, and I I had to shift a career that I was doing really, really well, and that ended up being kind of like stepping into that space of burnout to actually shift to helping people in a different way. And now I find myself going back to corporate in a
Mm.
different way, but from a place of groundedness, from a place of my way, from a place of the way that drives passion and purpose in a different way. And it's very, very interesting how it shows up in the body before we start to listen. And the body keeps the score. There's a book about it, and our bodies are constantly giving us the information that we need when something's not right. And I know just before I hit that space of burnout, I was angry. I was like any little thing and I would lose my mind, right? And I had like, and sometimes anger gets a bit of a bad reputation because either you go angry or you go depressed,
Mm.
right? It's like, or you stop caring. Um, and if we direct the energy of anger, because it's a beautiful emotion, if we can direct it in a way that is conducive for us, then it's quite supportive. It's not about repressing the anger because then it turns to resentment and it gets deeper. So I'm a believer of express your feelings 100% as long as you're not hurting anyone. But look, how do you direct this energy? Because emotions are just energy in motion. So it's like, how do I grab this fire? And even if it's like, I don't want to be in this position anymore, I'm going to go and study. I'm going to go do something different. I'm going to use this energy to this point in my life to pivot into
Mhm.
something that drives me or fuels me or brings me more passion in a different way. It's important to look at it from that space, from a space of curiosity as to what is showing up in your body. I know every time I get, like, if I get sick, if I have a cold or whatever it is, like, I do tend to look at it. Okay, where is it in my body? Where am I feeling it? What organ is it? What am I storing in this organ? What is the memory? What is the suppression? What is the emotion? What is the story? And I start to go through that, and then start to allow it to surface. That's the other thing. We suppress a lot of the stuff. Sometimes we need to look at it, right? We need to look at it, and it's so funny. And I'll stop talking in a minute. It's almost like people are like, "What's going
Mm.
on?" And it's like, do you know what's happening in the world? It's like, a blind pimple.
Mm.
It is so sore, and it has so much pressure. But the thing has got to pop in order to allow it to heal. So all the mess has got to come out in order for us to be able to heal it, because it's been lying underneath the surface, very, very dormant, as it starts to become uncomfortable. And we're in that space of uncomfortable before all the nonsense
Yeah.
comes out, so that we can start to heal that part of us, right?
Yes, and I think probably that this year is that pressure pimple that we are doing right now. And probably next year it's gonna be like a release of many things, of course, crumbling
Mm-hmm.
more of these institutions, and people accepting that negative health behaviors are just a consequence of not having this purpose alignment. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you don't feel that you are doing what you want, you immediately start losing energy. And as you mentioned,
Yeah.
either you go into anger and you do something to change your situation, or you go into depression.
Mm-hmm.
By going in the wrong direction, or in the depression state, you have a low energy state, because that's
Mm-hmm.
depression. And then you are more prone to adopt many of these unhealthy behaviors, which are
Yeah.
sedentary lifestyle. You don't have time. Of course, you don't have time for your body. You don't have time to do exercise. You don't have time to do anything almost. You start having poor diet because you look for things that
Yeah.
are just gonna make you feel better, which is this processed food thing. That's the purpose of the processed food thing. And then
Yeah.
other things that you can start doing if you go further down in this direction is that you start having substance abuse. And we are
Yeah.
also looking at that. And substance abuse now can be also translated into an addiction to the things, to the screens, either watching too much TV or going into too much time on these social networks and
Mm-hmm.
losing your life in those things. That's also an abuse. And that's also, it's not a substance, but it's something that is entering into your system through your eyes and is damaging your brain. And it's also raising the level of dopamine that you are releasing and creating a new threshold that you won't reach by
Yeah.
anything almost, but adding more things into that mix, which sometimes can be alcohol or can be smoking or can be any other drugs, no?
Sugar is another one. No, absolutely. You're 100% right. And I think that depression takes us into a state of deep rest, right? It's a rebirthing process. It's a really is a going within and looking at, okay, I'm living somebody else's life. This is not my life. This is not my passion. This is not my purpose. This is something else.
Mhm.
And it calls for deep rest. I agree, and yes, the addiction aspect of it is so many ways. Sugar is another one. You're right. Screen time, and sometimes we think that health is based on what we put in our mouths. Yes, we are what we eat, but we're also what we watch, what we listen to, what we feel. Like I remember, I think we were watching something on Netflix maybe a couple of years ago, and I was like watching something, and by the time I was like, I was so nervous. My shoulders were up and I was just sitting there in this and I'm like, this is not chilling. This is not relaxing. This is not fun. This is like I hardly watch any TV and now I'm like sitting in this kind of like oh kind of like state, kind of a thing where it taxes the nervous system, right?
Mhm.
So it's the environments we put ourselves in, even sitting in kind of like a space that's like if you walk into like I used to smoke as well, but like into the space of like smelling secondhand smoke, it influences your physical, your mental, your emotional state. The vibration of food that we put in our bodies, we become that, right? The words that we express, that we say, it changes our frequency, it changes our vibration. Our words, they say, like we constantly with our words we're spelling, we are bringing into existence what we express. And I usually say is kind of like, the universe, God, creator, whatever we believe in, unconditional love is allowing us to do what we want to do. So if we're constantly affirming something, we're saying, oh, if we say I'm the unluckiest person in the world,
Mm.
creator is saying, yes, you are. If
They
you're
needed
saying
you.
I'm the luckiest person in the world, creator is saying, yes, you are. So it's our words have a lot of power, which is it's so important. But that all affects our health. That all calls in our passion, our purpose, and what we express. It's so looking at the Akashic records, looking at it from an energetic lens, kind of like, again, we start looking at inflammation is a resistance to the soul's truth. We're denying ourselves our birthright, our blueprint, and we're disempowering who we are because I feel that the true definition of power is living who we are authentically. And I think it's a journey to get to know who we are. I think this is why we're here. Through all the conditioning, the patterns, the understanding that we've inherited, to then mostly spend our adulthood taking off these jackets, taking off these things. It really is about experiencing it all is important, right? Because even if we're living our lives for somebody else, it's a conditioning that then eventually you get into the stage where your soul will call you to looking at what is your own passion and purpose. And a lot of the times it's our physicality that kind of like puts us into the space of stop. And because our bodies are so resilient and our minds are so strong, it has to get to a place where you break your leg in 5 places, where you're forced to sit
Mm.
for 6 months. And that was my story. Thank goodness the irony is that it happened during a World Cup. So I got to see a little bit of the games in between and out of my consciousness. But it was like brilliant in that sense. But it's all about, knees, legs, it's not wanting to move forward in direction. We're not moving in our purpose, if we look at our gut, our heart and our mind, it's we're not digesting life, right? Something isn't sitting right in our soul level. Um, Joint
And
pain, too much
you,
flexibility, not enough flexibility. It's we're turning on ourselves energetically.
yeah, you spoke also about the food that we consume that is doesn't have any order. It doesn't have
Mm,
direction. Let's say to heal you, to nurture you, and also our bodies are giving you the highlights of what you should do with your life. The more order, the more balance, the more alignment that you have in your life, that's what your body is doing with health. Health,
yeah.
the process of healing, the process of being healthy, it starts with order. It starts with synchronization. It starts with this messaging that is happening. Just we are not noticing that, but there are a lot of things that are happening right now in our bodies that are allowing us to speak fluently, to speak about that topic that is important, and also start having this focus on the topics. And all of these synchronization states are the ones that are giving us health, are the ones that are giving us this process of allowing our bodies to
Hmm.
live on purpose, to live
Yeah.
in the situation that we want to feel these emotions, these positive emotions, and to start doing what we want and not what we have to do. And this is the difference. When you feel that is an obligation to do things, that's when you lose your alignment because you are not doing it because you want, it's just you are doing it because you need, and that's
Hmm.
a lacking state. So under that lacking state, you are not going to attract any abundance. You are just going to be in survival mechanism.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's saying yes to the things that light you up and no to the things that drain you. It's
Mhm.
reconnecting to the meaning of creation. It's reconnecting to nature, I think, tends to help us as well. So, activating our soul's blueprint and living from it. So, it's doing things differently is okay as well. And when our life aligns with our truth, our body doesn't have to scream for our attention, right? We will work through stuff. I believe that healing is a constant journey because we're constantly discovering the conditions that have been subconscious. And when they're ready to be released, they tend to become conscious, right? So it's the inner work that we need to do, the inner healing that needs to happen. But it's about at least it's we're here to be happy. If I was to say to you, make a wish, I bet you everybody's wish would end up being something that would make them happy, right? Even if you're wishing for somebody else, it will make you happy that they're happy, right? So life is too short to not be joyous. Life is too short to not be happy. And happiness is not a responsibility of somebody else. Happiness is our own responsibility, right? Which is important. Um, yeah, our energetic expression, unresolved conflict within the self's path. It's, again, whether it's inherited, whether it's part of our lineage, it's the body's way of saying, stop, you're carrying fire, you're burning inwards instead of creating outwards. So it's important um, to connect into self and going into that. I suppose I find it a meditative state, but it's important to reconnect with who we are and why we're here. And it's so important because I notice that a lot of the youth that we speak to these days, and you ask them, what do you want to do? They're like, well, how much money is in X, Y, and Z? And we were talking about it before. It's like we don't do things because it's a vocation, because we're passionate about, educating the future. the children of tomorrow, like you're teaching. It's like teaching used to be a vocation. I notice it when I go to parent teachers. There's very few teachers that it's like, this is a vocation, this is the teacher that will try and, like, it feels very much, it's kind of like, I'm going into teaching because it's more of a paycheck rather than a vocation. And I'm not saying that, I mean, we've been very lucky with the teachers that we've had. But it's the same as medicine, or, a lot of families I find put pressure. I have a lot of kind of like Asian families that put pressure on you to either become a doctor or become an accountant. And it's, a lot of the times it's not even your life that you're leading anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and let's just take one example of any kind of person that doesn't live, or even us when we were doing the things that we didn't
Mm-hmm.
like, or we started not liking them. When we are working on a job that we dislike, any one of us, when we feel disconnected from this space, when we don't feel listened to, when we can't express our ideas because there are certain procedures that you have
Mm-hmm.
to follow, and you have to be in a box, and you have to think in a very narrow situation, then you are not aligned with your passion. And what happens is you start repressing your emotions, repressing what you are thinking, repressing what you want to express, and repressing sometimes what you want to do. So you start just lacking and losing your spiritual connection and your existential uh, driven soul. It's dying. You are literally dying, and you are decaying in
Mm-hmm.
a process that is slowly but quickly going to lead you to feel this chronic emotional stress. And that's why
Yeah.
many people we see on everywhere in the world right now, it's what is happening. It's a lot of violence, a lot of rage, a lot of
Mm.
polarization of things. Why? Because they are emotionally stressed all the time. And what
Yeah.
happens with that? You eat poorly, you don't sleep because you have too
Yeah.
much going on inside of you.
But I'll talk about that. That you're right in that, but that is also a way of coping.
Yes,
It's about, you actually, if we look
mechanism.
at things from vibration and frequency, you actually have to drop your frequency in order to survive that, right?
Mhm.
It becomes like a false identity kind of like programming, right? It becomes kind of like, not only do they crush your dreams by telling you, okay, you've got to be realistic, or you need to be responsible, or you need to fit into a system, that never honors your soul's truth. It's almost kind of like it's a spiritual amnesia that we get into, and you forget who we are, and we settle for who we're told to be. And in order to cope and become who we're told to be, we have to drop our frequency, whether it's through substance abuse, whether it's through poor food, whether it's through poor reading books, or that are not in alignment with of a higher frequency, or we start feeding ourselves to lower our frequency to be able to cope in these environments.
Yes, completely agree, and that's what happens. And I'm just listening to a book of Nietzsche, and
Mm,
it's one of the I mean, the title, I don't remember the title. It's in Latin. The title, it's Ecce of Home, something like that.
mm-hmm,
But he speaks about illness and about how these states of illness lead you to develop resiliency,
mm,
because you have this time, your body is allowing you time to reflect,
yeah,
on the things that you are doing in your life. And
yeah,
that's when this spark of purpose can lighten up, and either you change how you are living, or you will keep falling into these disease states,
yeah,
because they are unbalanced states. They are low frequency, as you mentioned, states. And we
mm-hmm,
need to adapt in a better way, because feeling numb or feeling empty, it's what this driven society is wanting from us. Because when
Yeah.
you feel empty, when you feel numb, you are an easy target for many of the nonsense things that we are looking in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very interesting because that numbing aspect is a coping mechanism, right? Yeah, so suggestions are, when listen to your body,
Yeah.
listen to it, purpose requires you to break the contract with self-abandonment. And that's the other thing as well. We're taught to put everything else first before ourselves because our bodies are
Mm.
resilient, right? And then life starts to lose color, and the synchronicities dry up, and we start to feel hollow or numb, or even it's so stressful when we're in this space of ignoring who we are, and sometimes there's a fear of stepping into the grandness of who we are as well, so we end up playing small, because it keeps us safe. It's a trauma response, all of these things, kind of like keeping us small so we don't get out there, so we're not, it's quite, can be quite fearful in doing what you're meant to do. So a lot of the times it's like we need to get comfortable in the uncomfortable of being who we are, right? It's pushing those boundaries or those limitations that we have created for ourselves that keep us safe. And it's so funny because the smaller the circle we make, the smaller it will be. And this is why we have to push those boundaries of that circle wider so that we have more space to breathe by doing things that scare us a little bit as well, which is important. And I was talking to a psychologist the other day, and she was saying that our brain grows when we do hard things,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And she was saying it's actually important to do things out of your comfort zone. And a lot of the times, living your passion and your purpose is living outside of your comfort zone because we're being pushed to be greater. Because we are amazing, divine beings that we are so much more creative. Like we manifest every single thing in our lives, right?
Mhm.
And we do it subconsciously. So imagine if we started to actually manifest our lives consciously and co-create with this, field of intelligence that is there. Life starts to become malleable. And
Mhm.
I also believe that disease does not attach to, there is an unhealed aspect of us that needs to be cleared when we get colds, when we get flus, when we get, whatever it may be. There is an aspect of the disease that is telling us, it's giving us a clue as to what needs to be resolved,
Mhm.
right? And we look at self-care as selfish, but it's not. It's absolute necessity, because if we want to transform the world, it has to start with us. We have to lead by example. Actually, the internal healing that we do, I believe, changes our external environment. The more we heal, the more our lives change. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to get into parallel realities and dimensions and all sorts of stuff, because we're shifting into those every time that we heal, every time, every second of every day, we choosing which paradigm we're living in.
Yeah. I completely agree. And probably people are going to think, well, it's easy to say it when you already do it or when you are already living it. But what you
Mm-hmm.
can do, and or what I can suggest for many people, is that you start doing it on your first organizing your life a little bit, ordering your life, and having some time to project, to visualize what you want to do. What is your real passion? What is your real calling? Whatever it is, you can prepare on that field. You can start learning new skills on the way. In the meantime, that you have a corporate job, doing that and having a timeline. having a deadline where you say, well, in 2 years or in 3 years, I'm going to quit and I'm going to take the step. But in those 3 years or 2 years, you can prepare, you can have skills, you can start looking what you want to do in the future. And you need to start having time to do those things, because that is the time that you will be looking forward to doing those things, because you will be living your passion in small bites, but it will add up until you have the strength and the courage to quit the job, to leave the safety, to leave the comfort, and to start stepping into the next path that is your calling, that is your soul's purpose. That's what I can recommend. It's not, it doesn't have to be from today and you start tomorrow living on purpose and being healthy and all of those things, but you can, uh, let's say, sketch, visualize, and create the new path that you want to live on. Yeah.
Yeah. A great exercise to do with regards to that is, I absolutely agree. It's taking a time to stop, meditate 2, 3 minutes a day.
Mhm.
Just start slowly. Like, it's really about, even if it's just focusing in on your breath, it's a slowing down in order to speed up becomes really, really important, or finding some sort of a practice that is in alignment with you, right? Whether it's Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, walking in nature, whatever it is, find that one thing and make that kind of like a non negotiable in that sense, and make sure you carve out time for sleep. Right, that is so important. That aspect of rest becomes very, very important. And then it's, ask yourself, if time and money were in abundance, how would I be of service to humanity? And yes, if you need to leave your job, if it's not aligned, absolutely make a plan. Or other, just the other way to do it is, instead of resisting, choose it. Look at how you can make a difference. Really look at how you can embrace it in a way and actually make a difference. It's
Mm.
even by the way we start to treat other people. Come in with a blank slate. Allow things to unfold in a different way. So it's really looking at it until that serves you, and when it serves you no more, it's moving on to the next thing that brings you joy and excitement, because life is too short to do anything else.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you can do is step into observation of your feelings. What is making me angry? What are the stories I'm telling myself? Is
Jour-
this something that I love, or is this somebody else's? Is this somebody else's passion, or is this my passion?
Journaling also helps a lot.
Yeah.
Write down your thoughts, write down your emotions, write down why you feel that way, and you will
Mm-hmm.
start seeing that many of those things are not even yours. They are just being stick to you due to the environment that you are living. But
Yeah.
once you do that, once you start writing down, you will feel that release of those emotions. Taking short walks
Mm-hmm.
can also allow your brain to distract yourself from those repetitive thoughts, and it will
Yeah.
activate your system to start releasing endorphins, releasing all of these magical substances that we release when we do exercise, even
Mm-hmm.
with a short walk. Serotonin, um, BDNF, you start creating new pathways, you start creating new neurons, you start protecting your own neurons. So,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things you can do to reclaim your purpose. And I think finally, what you can do is just write down who you want to be, and thinking that you already are that person, being in gratitude of being that person. Even if you are writing down a letter to Santa Claus, and even becoming a child that writes again with that passion of writing a letter to spiritual presence. And when you write down your desires, when you write down how do you want to become, then you start feeling that motivation, and you start feeling that you can go out from that low state energy. No.
Yeah, yeah. But I encourage you to feel your feelings 100% and then
Mhm.
release them. It's important to not suppress them. If you're angry, and it's okay. Like, grief is okay in a sense of, we grieve what was, we grieve the old versions of ourselves. We grieve, you know, um, old friendships that fall away, and that's okay, right? It's important to go through that process 100% and then let it go. Um, yeah, no need to suppress that. It's look at how can you express that, and then then just allow it to leave is important. But it's you are the single most important person in your life, because you're the only one who's going to be with you to the end of time. Your
Yeah.
parents hopefully will leave before you do. You'll leave your children behind. They'll get up, they'll get married, they'll move on. Sometimes our partners leave as well. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's important to give from overflow and not from empty, not from burnout, not from it's yeah, it's so important to take care of ourselves. And I used to, and we get so taught, everybody else before us. Especially as women, we get like, it's the children, it's the husband, the wife, it's whatever it is. It's like it's the neighbors, it's the whatever. In the end, it's kind of like it's everybody else, and then last it's you. Kind of a thing. And we start to feel guilty when we put ourselves first. And it's important to go, okay, no, I need rest today, so I need to say no to this.
Yeah. Well, I think that we cover plenty of things that will be in alignment with how not living in your purpose will lead you to lose the meaning of your life. No.
Yeah, it's detrimental to your health. Your physical health is always telling you what direction to move in next, right?
Exactly.
So it's important.
So
Absolutely. Look after yourselves, look after your mind, look after your bodies, look after what are you putting into physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Is it soul food or is it junk food? And it's okay to have junk food once in a while, but it's like, is it soul food or is it junk food, right? What you're
yeah.
saying yes to in one thing, you're saying no to something else. So look at what are you saying yes to and what are you saying no to, which is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will hope for your answers, for your reflections, for sharing your own journeys into this biology of meaning, and how you are living on purpose, or you lost your purpose and you want some help to
Yeah.
find it. Thank you. And we will listen to each other on our next episode. Bye.